Welcome back. The Department of Justice and FBI announcing a months-long operation to remove Chinese malware Plug X from thousands of infected computers across the world. Court documents show that China's government was paying hackers to steal victim data and control their computers. This revealed just 2 weeks after the Treasury confirmed a cyber attack where Chinese hackers accessed unclassified documents. The Biden administration is considering putting sanctions on the Chinese cybersecurity firm behind the Salt Typhoon hack, an espionage campaign which targeted the Trump campaign and tapped the phones of top law enforcement officials and influentials across the country. The firm behind the hack still not publicly identified. The Washington Post says that this designating the company will not stop China from spying, but it could help expose Beijing's growing practice of using commercial firms to carry out state-sponsored intrusions. Joining me now is retired four-star general, former NSA Director, and former head of U.S. Cyber Command, General Keith Alexander. General, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Good to be here and good to see you again.
Assess the national security threat. And really what we want to get to is how we defend ourselves against these foreign bad actors. But first, assess this threat for us.
Okay, so you hit some great points up front about China. First and foremost, they've been hacking into our country for the last 20 years, stealing intellectual property, perhaps the biggest push of and theft of intellectual property and the greatest transfer of wealth in history, over $500 billion a year. Recently, as you noted, China has been getting into our critical infrastructure. And by getting into the critical infrastructure, what they're doing is setting the stage to attack us if there's a threat or if they move on Taiwan. They're sending a strategic message saying, we're prepared to conduct cyber operations in your country and you can't stop us. And they're right where we sit today. Our system is not ready to handle that kind of threat. And we need to take this threat very seriously. We need to move on it. In my experience working with China in the past, they say they'll do something, but they don't. They said they'd stop stealing intellectual property. They didn't. They said they didn't do this, and they have. It's in their national interest to have a way of stopping us from helping Taiwan should they choose to go after it. So this is a strategic message, and it's interesting. President Trump has set, when he was in office before, authorities that gave NSA and Cyber Command ability to hack back or to go against some of these. We need to expand that. We need to get very seriously about how we're organized and where we go in the future.
What are they doing with this information, General? Why do they want to hack into these phones? What are they finding, and how are they using it against us?
So what they do is they grab personal information like yours or mine, and they take that information and they use that to get into networks that you or I are in, and call that living off the land, if you will. And then they look like a normal U.S. person going into another facility, and it's very difficult to detect. That living off the land and the capabilities that they've created with that gives them an extraordinary ability to then hack into critical infrastructure, like our energy, our water, and other key things that we need. Power. We need to go after that in a serious way.
You know, there's all other ways that the CCP is also conducting surveillance. I mean, that's what we're hearing about TikTok as well, right? And so many people who've abused the visa process and are here conducting surveillance. I mean, this ban on TikTok is coming this Sunday. If the Chinese parent company ByteDance can't sell the app to a U.S. buyer, it would then become illegal for the app stores and web services to sell or distribute it. In anticipation, some TikTok users, some Americans as well, flocking to another Chinese app, which is largely Chinese, Little Red Book, or Red Note it's called. It's a heavily censored app and is used almost exclusively by Chinese speakers. What is your stance on the TikTok ban and your observation of Americans now going to this other Chinese app, Red Note?
Well, from a national security perspective, think about China having access to 170 million U.S. phones and sending messages. If there's an engagement on Taiwan, they can say, we're the victims, and spread that disinformation through 170 million people. I think if TikTok is to remain, it has to be under a U.S. authority, a U.S. person, and we have to assure that that capability doesn't allow China any access to those phones or ability to send messages and other things that could hurt us in a wartime situation.
Is there anything else we could be doing to stop China from this bad behavior? I mean, it's ongoing and seems to never stop without much response from the U.S.
So that's the key point that I would make. They're stealing $500 billion a year in intellectual property, and they've been doing that for 20 years.
Right.
The way we stop that is by organizing our cyber defense capabilities, our cyber offensive capabilities all together. I think President Trump has an opportunity to do a strategic defense-like initiative in cyber. Put these together, train the public and private sectors in cyber for this kind of capability, share the information, test, train, and work it. If we do that, first thing we can do is we can cut down the theft of intellectual property, give the authorities to punch back on those that are stealing it, and protect our civil liberties and privacy at the same time. We can do both. I think this is where our nation needs to go. This is, with AI coming, this is an existential threat to our country.
Right. Well, I mean, look, things have only gotten more dangerous in the last few years, and now President Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, sat in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee for his confirmation hearing yesterday. Democrats grilled him on his stances, his qualifications, personal history, but Hegseth remained unrattled, speaking to the actual priorities on foreign policy. Watch this.
What I know on the nuclear side is that Russia and China are rushing to modernize and build arsenals larger than ours. We need to match threats to capabilities, and the systems we elevate will be tied to whether those capabilities are needed based on the adversaries.
General, what were your thoughts on that hearing? Do you think Hegseth has the experience that you'd want in a defense secretary, given his work in our military?
The most important part, he does have a background in defense, and you see that in his time in the military. I think the most important thing that he has is the trust and confidence of the president, and that's going to be very important. It's a big job, as you know, going into the Defense Department, working with all the secretaries of the services and the general officers there. It's a daunting task. He's a good person. He's, I think, trusted by Trump. He's going to have, it's an uphill battle for him to learn. It's a huge job. I think our country will benefit from it. There are some things he's got to get through, which he did in the hearings yesterday, and we'll see where the Senate goes next week.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to hear a few more questions about what we've talked about in this interview, as opposed to all of the personal attacks. I don't think there was enough spent on Ukraine and China, given the threats out there. But of course, it was mixed. General, it's great to get your knowledge and experience out this morning. We so appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Maria. You have a good day.
General Keith Alexander joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.